guys, we're back. It's been a while, but I've got on a great guest where it seems like we have a lot of things in common: travel, adventure, real estate, of course. But I'd like to welcome Chad Bartlett to the podcast. Appreciate you taking your time to jump on this interview. Hopefully we can spread a bunch of knowledge to everybody. And like you said, let them know that it ain't all about sitting behind the computer all day, that there's more to life than just the grind or the hustle. But thank you for coming on. Let's start out with tell us who you are, kind of what you do, why you got into it, and we'll just move along in the story.
Yeah, I'm Chad Bartlett, originally from Cleveland, Ohio. Spent some time in Kansas City in my military days and thereafter. But this whole real estate thing came about when I was living in Anchorage, Alaska. I was going to school at the University of Alaska, Anchorage, trying to figure out a way to break free of my mechanics job. That's what I did in the Army, and that's what I did when I got out of the Army and provided for my family that way. And I thought college could break that cycle of me changing oil and busting up my knuckles. And it turns out that you can't do much with a bachelor's degree in anthropology. So, Brandon, man, I had to come up with a different route.
Yeah, so real estate in Anchorage. I know a buddy, actually RJ, who does a little bit of real estate up there. What made you choose real estate in such a, it's like a foreign land to us down here in the lower 48, but was it prosperous? Was it like a home run right out the gate? Where do you have a bunch of competition like we do here in Dallas? Or how did that look?
Yeah, I've heard success stories from RJ. I couldn't figure out how to crack the code in Alaska.
No.
I was grinding for 6 months straight, just trying to get a deal, and I couldn't make it work. So what I did was I shifted focus and I just started looking at Kansas City, thousands of miles away, before I understood that there were terms like virtual wholesaling, and remote investing. I didn't even know that those things existed. I just knew out of necessity that I couldn't figure out Alaska. So God bless RJ for figuring out, man. I just wasn't smart enough to figure out how to get deals there. So actually early on in my business, I was able to put systems in place that allowed me to kind of be anywhere and do anything.
Yeah. That's crazy. Because that's one of the things I'm looking at is Dallas is so competitive. It's like, well, how do I either switch business models or find a new location? And you just did it right out the gate. So that makes where the story is going to go pretty easy for you. So how'd you manage, or what'd you do from afar, from out of Anchorage, from Kansas or in Kansas City?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I was still working 60 plus hours as the lead technician at my mechanics job. And I would wake up early because the time difference between KC and Alaska is 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So I would wake up early. It would be 5 o'clock in Alaska, and it'd be 8 o'clock in Kansas City. And I'm just online, just looking for deals, paging through Craigslist and all the for sale by owner stuff, and just trying to line up my day, eat a little breakfast, and then go to work. Now, a lot of guys at the mechanic shop, they smoke cigarettes. So, I don't smoke cigarettes, but when my phone rang, I would take a success break rather than a cigarette break. So I'd answer my phone and just try to herd together these leads. And then at home, I'd spend time with the kids. They go to bed, and then I'm setting up my next day. So in the beginning, it was all just about lead generation, just trying to figure out how to find leads, and then put in some systems in place in Kansas City where people could actually meet with the sellers and go take a look at these properties and do some of the face-to-face boots on the ground stuff for me. That's kind of what my day was like at first. We call it paying the success tax, doing what you have to do now so you can do what you want to do later.
Yep. That's awesome. I didn't ask you, what's the time frame from now where you are in Columbia to when you first started, this first 6 months of no good deals in Alaska, to kind of like the story where you're at now is when you first started figuring out the Kansas City thing and bringing people on?
Yeah, I got into real estate in 2011.
Okay.
And my first deal from Kansas City in Alaska was in 2012, middle of the year 2012. And I did that for, 3 or 4 months of deal flow and started to get good at it. And that's when I quit my mechanics job, like 3 months after I got my first deal.
Wow.
And I said, look, I got enough money in the bank where if something happens, I can always go back to mechanics, but let me just jump in full time and see how much longer I can make this grow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what happened. But, you know, after I quit my mechanics job, we moved to Kansas City, and then I started to be the guy that does everything else inside my business again. And I just kind of took a step backwards and was just trying to figure out why did the deal flow dry up? And it was because it was me being the one-man show, just trying to do everything. So it took me a number of years to get it through my thick skull that what I'm doing isn't working, and I need to start putting some systems in place so that I can replicate myself and really grow my business. You know, a lot of investors have a feast or famine roller coaster income, and it's because we're not focusing on the most important things in our business. And we feel like we got to format the spreadsheets, or we got to talk to the sellers, or we got to go on the appointments. And when we do that, it's really hindering, you know, what we should be doing is focusing on bigger deals and more consistent deal flow.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're in Alaska working in Kansas City, that was wholesaling. Is that what you continue to do?
Yeah, I for the beginning, it was all wholesale. And then after I did wholesaling for a couple of years, I was looking at, okay, I want to start building up my passive income. And I also want to do flips. You know, I'm tired of giving all these deals on to these guys, and I'm just making a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the evolution of my business at that time. But if I fast forward to where I am now and just trying to have a business that mirrors what I want my lifestyle to be, you know, as I travel more and more, you know, it's just a lot more stressful for me to do flips. I've had some bad experiences with flips.
Right.
And I realized that I can be a lot more fluid in just doing more wholesale. So that's really what my focus has been on right now is passive and wholesales.
Yeah.
But I've gone through the gambit, man. I've got my bumps and bruises along the way, doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's just real estate investing. I mean, I've been there. Everybody I know has been there. There's been a couple of guys that say, well, if you've lost money in a deal, you're not doing it. I'm like, I don't know how you could not lose money on a couple of these things. Like, this is crazy. I mean, even if you make a good buying decision, you might list it wrong in the wrong time of year, and then it sits for months.
Exactly.
Okay. So you've been in since 2011, 2012, you got your first one. Now we're in 2020. Let's give the people a little sneaky poo of what you're doing right now. You're living in Colombia full time for a year now, right?
Yeah, man, I'm in South America. I've been here for over a year with my wife and 4 kids. The kids are in school here learning Spanish. I'm learning Spanish, man, and the business is going good.
That's freaking awesome. Okay, so what year did you were like, I don't want to be in the U.S. anymore? And was it like, boom, drop shop, we're leaving? Or was it, let's go take a vacation, and then you stumbled into a lifelong type of deal or full-time deal?
Brandon, I joined the military to see the world. Like right out of high school, I wanted to see the world and see what else is out there. And so I joined the Army, and the Army sent me to Kansas. So
Yeah.
I didn't get to see the world that way.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I went up to Alaska, and I was going to college for anthropology. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get to travel the world for anthropology. Mm-hmm. And that didn't really work out like that too, man. So I've been trying to travel the world for a long time. But, you know, real estate is the vehicle that has allowed me to do that. And it just started off with international trips. You know, my family and I have taken a lot of international trips: New Zealand, Australia, you know, Iceland, France, Costa Rica, Trinidad, like a lot of different places that we've seen. But, you know, vacation is nice. And sometimes when you're, you know, on vacation, you come back home and you need a vacation from your vacation. And so, you know, we had the conversation of, it'd be nice to be able to spend more time, you know, like do the touristy stuff, but like, let's do the local stuff too. Like, let's dip into what the culture and what the locals are doing. And let's just be able to spend more time. So knew that the kids were good travelers because of the trips that we've taken in the past. But in 2017 is when we started having a realistic conversation of maybe we could just travel full time and live abroad and just see things on our timeline.
Yeah, man, that's like literally a dream come true of mine. We started traveling in 2017, and we did just little short trips, cruise, and then it went to last year. We went to Ireland, Nigeria, Peru. I went to Cambodia, Vietnam, Mexico with the kids. Like, we went all over the place, and I was like, man, why can't we just like do this full time? And it's always been one of those struggles. And at first it was like, man, the vacations would last a week or two. And by week 2, you're like, oh, okay, I need to get home. But I noticed as I extended my vacations, my last one in Cambodia was over 3 weeks. And as soon as that week 2 passes of being homesick and needing to get back to work, you're like, I'll just stick around a little bit. You can just stay here. But there's always that business in the background. So let's talk about how you were able to get to that point where the stress isn't there. Well, you already knew how to do the mobile deal or a virtual deal, but what made the serious talk in 2017 turn into real talk and you finally just cut the ties?
It was just a conversation about what am I doing in my business right now that I shouldn't be doing, and then eliminating that and putting those systems in place. It's about having the right hires and delegation. A lot of my mentors have these like big offices and they got 20 plus people in the office, and that wasn't my goal at all. I don't want to have to earn $40K a month just to break even. Yeah. I have all of this overhead. That wasn't my business model. That's not what I wanted to do. So I really just had to build a blueprint and design a business around my lifestyle, and just realizing what are the important tasks and then finding the right people to do them. And then creating training, because you're going to have turnover. Everybody's going to have turnover. I don't care if you've got the best A player around. There might be places where might be times where those people leave. Yeah. So it's all about having systems in place, not only for hiring, but also for the training. Because one of the things is, in the beginning of my business, I hated hiring because I had to spend all my time with them and teach them and hold their hands through things. And now I'm more focused on finding the people that can kind of read between the lines when I hire them, following these videos and training videos that have been created. And really, even the hiring process is more hands-off now as well. So just being able to kind of almost like going up in a helicopter and looking down at my business as if it's laid down on the ground, disassembling it, making sure that all the pieces are in place and it's running without me. That's when in 2017, it was like, I finally kind of like picked my head up from the foxhole and looked around, and it's just like, this business doesn't really need me to survive. Like, I don't have to work 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week and physically be here for this thing to live. And that's how the conversation started.
Awesome. Man, I got something in my throat. So you said build a team. What does that team look like? Because early last year, I was on a similar path. We hadn't had any serious conversations of moving out of country at the time, but for me, my team started as all virtual assistants. I hadn't thought about, and I was still working in my local market. And then I ended up ultimately getting rid of all the virtual assistants except my podcast one, because we switched from single family to commercial. But you said you had boots on the ground that are doing the appointments and all that stuff. Is it a mixture of virtual assistants? Or you have no virtual assistants?
No, I like virtual assistants. I think there's a time and a place. I have a VA that does all of my admin stuff, text blasts, and anything that doesn't require a phone.
Right.
She's killer at. She does all of that stuff. But filling in the gaps, first point of contact for my sellers is a call center. I've got a US based call center, and they gather all the information, and I've got a lead manager that makes sure that my marketing pieces are on budget and that we're getting the right ROIs from them. When it comes to boots on the ground, my business has changed. In the beginning, it was me going on appointments, and then it was an acquisitions manager going on appointments. And then I just realized that we're getting beat to the punch. We're spending a lot of time on the road with what I call windshield time that was really inefficient. And if I can get a seller on the phone, I just want to close the deal right then and there instead of trying to reschedule. I was getting beat out when sellers are telling me that they weren't available until later on in the week, and then they call me back to tell me, hey, the property's sold. That just drives me crazy and was a real head scratcher, to the point where we just shifted over to, we've been doing this enough. We know on average what an investor is probably going to put into a property like this, what the cost of repairs, and then we just back out of, we just work it backwards to come up with our offer amounts. And so, that was me for a while, and that was the lead manager for a while. And then I decided I found a call center that's all they do is negotiations. So
Really?
I've morphed into having, I thought that I was good at sales, but I never thought that I was the best. In the back of my head, I'm like, I know that there's somebody that's an absolute savage that is amazing at sales. Like I don't like to be on the phone, and I don't like to do sales.
Right.
So let me put somebody in place. As a business owner, we feel like we have to do all of these things. But I knew that I wasn't the best really at anything in my business other than knowing how it should be run and operated.
Right.
So this call center, they are good with timeshares and negotiating insurance claims for attorneys. And I said, man, I mean, if they could do that, I'm sure that they can get some. If they could call somebody, cold call on a timeshare and get them to give somebody their credit card number over the phone,
right,
surely they can negotiate a house sale and get a contract signed. So
yeah,
I trained them up, and now once the contract is received, then I just have a small position for somebody as a photographer that also has a little bit of experience with construction. They go over and they take the pictures and they send them over to my team. My team puts together the dispositions email and text blast. And that role to meet with the seller in person isn't as important as it used to be for me.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I mean, I have a million questions, but I also don't want you to give it all away at the same time. Are you asking the sellers for pictures in the beginning, or are you relying on them to tell you the condition of their own home?
We ask them the condition, and a lot of times when you say, "Does the property need any work?" they're going to say no.
Yeah.
If you say, "What work does the property need?" they may say, "Oh, maybe a little update, maybe some touch-up paint."
Yeah.
If you say, "What work does the property need in order for a family with a baby to move in?" then you start to get a little bit more details. But for us, it's important to try to get as much information from them. We always add a buffer. We know that it's going to need, at minimum, it's going to need an upgrade, or they wouldn't be reaching out to us. Okay,
right.
So we factor into that. And then, our team asks them about the roof and the mechanicals and the age of some of the expensive things. But here's the thing, like if we negotiate on the property, and then we go to the property and we find out that it's not at all what the seller said, then it's an opportunity for us to renegotiate with them as well. So, we're based on what they're saying, and we're trying to be as efficient as possible. But if we're not getting the most honest, and we add a pad, we add a buffer always. But if we're not getting a straightforward information from the sellers, we have to negotiate.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often, but we always have that in the back that, we have that opportunity.
Yeah. Awesome. I have a million questions, because this is something that I've been struggling with personally. Is, like I said, Dallas is very saturated. Investor buyers are buying from wholesalers at over 80% now in Dallas. And one of the things I ran into when I was doing a lot of my own marketing was these wholesalers offering significantly more than I would ever even think about buying a price. And then they were still being able to sell it. And so I can never figure out why were they paying that much, and who the heck these investors were buying that much. I was like, I'm going to find another market. And then I ran into this problem where, well, how do I get to another market without moving there? And then I did all these things or I thought about all these things you were saying. And then I ran into all these barriers, one being the pictures, the condition, viewing it. And I've never been able to successfully, actually, I have bought a house via text and never went to the house. She sent me pictures and all that stuff. So that was kind of cool, but I couldn't figure out a way to duplicate it. And that was the problem. What were the other things I was having an issue with? Oh, and then the other thing I was thinking about, okay, so if it's not in a market that I'm familiar with, like I'm licensed here, so I can pull comps. And then I know there's a program here called Propelio that can pull comps, but Propelio isn't always in an area that I might want to go to. So what are you basing your offer on? Do you have a realtor company right on site, or do you base it off of a probable Zillow estimate, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, I don't love Zillow.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but I don't know how. That's one of my problems is.
Yeah, man. So actually, I'm in a couple different markets myself, so I can relate to what you're saying 100%. So in Kansas City, that's Missouri and Kansas. And when we lived there, my wife went through the process of getting her license, just so she could list my flips and we could save money on that and be able to pull comparables, which is an awesome resource that I know a lot of people don't have access to. So I get it. In Cleveland is another market for me. I don't have a license there, but since you're an agent and since my wife is an agent, it's an easier conversation for her to reach out to agents out there and say, hey, look, can we get on an assistance account or a secretarial account is what it's called in some parts of the world. And I think it's like $45 a quarter, and you get MLS access that's kind of piggybacked off of another agent's access. And it can't be a one-sided relationship. It's got to be a two-sided relationship. So what does the agent get out of that? Mr. or Mrs. Agent, I get a lot of leads, and I'm getting started, and I'm going to be generating a lot of leads. Yeah. And a lot of those aren't going to work as an investor. Some of these people are just going to be perfect for listings. And so in exchange for you allowing me to kind of piggyback off of your account and be able to pull comparables, I'd love to be able to send you these leads for people that just don't work for me. It's going to be perfect you to list as an agent. So it's got to be a symbiotic relationship. But that's kind of, if I was going to start today brand new to go into a new market, I want to build an alliance with an agent who is kind of the gatekeeper to the comparables, so I can kind of see what's going on there, go in there, pull cash solds, see where the hot spots are, things like that. That's kind of where I would start. Interesting.
Okay. Awesome. Actually, I'm thinking about all my questions, and this conversation could go forever. So I'm trying to figure out how to shorten it down, because now I'm thinking about marketing. Well, my marketing here, I've kind of got it pretty dialed in, but I've heard that in other markets, they're not having the same success with certain things. Like I turned off my mass texting and mass cold calling in RVM, but I know people in other areas are just straight dominating with that. So how do you determine what marketing avenues to pursue?
Yeah, you got to kind of play around with it a little bit, right?
I know that's the hard part. Yeah.
There's no hard and fast rule, but you should allocate a certain dollar amount per month so that you can try these new things. I think at the end of the day, I think the most important things are the lists. When you're looking at cold calls or mailers or text blasts, that's just kind of the vehicle, right? So we got to find out what's the good source. Yeah. But the other thing that's important too, when you're talking about these wholesalers are offering way too much, but people are buying them. Part of my team every month is still building up our buyers list, because new buyers are always coming into the pool. Yeah. We're asking them, like the buyers that I was selling to 2 years ago can't afford me anymore. Right. I've moved on to the buyers who are paying more. Yeah. I don't know what those buyers are seeing. I don't know where they think the trajectory of the market is going, but I want to cater to them because they're giving me substantially more than those buyers were giving me in 2017, 2018. Right. And that's just the thing. If I'm moving into a new market as well, that's the other thing too. I know a lot of trainers talk about get a good deal and the buyers will come. Don't worry about a buyer's list. But for me, if I'm going into a brand new market and I don't know anything about anything, how do I know what the good areas are? How do I know what the buyers are paying for these properties and all of this stuff? So, as cliche or elementary as it may sound, a buyer's list is super important for my business. Yeah. Understanding kind of where the market is shifting, so every month we're building new buyers. We're asking them, what percentage of ARV are they buying at? What's their typical renovation costs? And that's how we're kind of continuing to keep our pulse on the markets. Yeah.
Well, I know the way I built my list, pulling the cash sales and off Facebook groups and networking and a variety of other things. But are you itemizing or categorizing that list to who buys where, or are you just straight blasting the whole thing every time you get a deal?
I just blast it because there's so much overlap. In the areas, like we don't really go for a lot of the fringe areas. We want to go where people are fighting for the deals. And so we're just sending everybody everything. Yeah. And then the other thing too is as soon as it sells, right away the VA is sending out a new email saying, sorry, you missed this one, act faster next time. And so it's letting people know that we have a good product and that they need to act fast the next time. There's a lot of those couch investors that are like, hey, you know what, this weekend I'll go take a look at it. And I don't get any greater satisfaction than sending out a sold email out to those buyers that are like, hey, I'll go see it in a couple of days.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand that. Okay. Let's get out of the nitty gritty for here a second. To make that transition into Colombia, you said you were acquiring rentals in Kansas City. Was it the business was producing enough money, or the passive was enough money for you to take off and head down there?
No, the business, right? Like I wanted to make sure that I had enough of passive that if nothing else went right in my business, I had that safety net to fall back on.
Yeah.
But it was a combination of both. I didn't want one side to die out while the other one was just kind of limping along. So,
right.
You know, I did kind of have a safety net, but yeah, I wanted to make sure that all aspects were going. But I'll be honest with you, I had 8 active flips going on when we left the country.
Really?
And I didn't love my life for the next 8 to 10, 12 months after that, because everything that could have fallen apart did. And that's when I really had to say, look, I need to make an in-game pivot and make some changes.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been stressful, especially if those contractors knew you had left full time.
Yeah. I went through 3 project managers on the road, and I had an all-star project manager that was all good while I was there.
Yeah.
And it was like a whole different person when I left, man. It's crazy.
Really? Yeah, that's nuts. I don't understand people. I'm thinking about now, but Colombia, people think Colombia doesn't seem on the surface level, because we're in America, that Colombia is like the go-to spot for a family. You said you eventually ended up in Colombia. So you head down to South America and you ended up there. Can you give it, walk through that a little bit?
We started traveling through Central America. We spent some time in Guatemala, which is beautiful. We were going to spend some time in Nicaragua, and some civil unrest happened. So we skipped there and we went on to Panama. We had already spent a lot of time in Costa Rica, so we jumped to Panama. And then just geographically, it just made sense to go to Colombia. My wife and I, neither one of us really knew anything about Colombia at all. I think that was probably before all these narco shows and all these television shows that all these people always talk to me about that I still haven't seen an episode of.
Yeah.
But my wife is kind of tapped into these different Facebook groups for people who travel full time with kids.
Yeah.
And that mindset is called world schooling. So my wife had made a lot of connections with people who have had some positive experiences in Colombia. We ended up in Medellin. The locals call it Medellin. And it had been nothing but great since the minute when we touched down. We're close enough to the equator where it's warm, but we're high enough in the mountains where it's like spring. It's like 70s, like 24/7 here. So it's amazing. But the other thing too is the people are incredibly nice. Obviously, we stick out like sore thumbs. Like, people know that we're not from here, and they really go out of their way. Me being from Cleveland, when I touch down and people want to help me, I'm like, what's the angle? Like, what are you trying to get out of this relationship? But the fact of the matter is, these people are just so happy that you're visiting and genuinely interested in how they live and their culture.
Yeah. And
the city is built up, man. Like, there is anything that you could ever want here is here, which is a stark contrast to Guatemala. Guatemala has its charm, and it was really beautiful and inexpensive to live in. But it's not like that you were going to go to the movies or buy some designer jeans or, whatever, any time of day, go to the bowling alley.
Yeah.
In Colombia, it's built up the same way the United States is. And it's just incredible. Like I said earlier, the kids are in school, they're making friends here, and the school that they're in, they teach entrepreneurship and ethics and technology. And, we didn't know what we were going to be getting into, but it's been great. And to speak to the people who understand Medellin from the TV shows, Pablo Escobar is, according to the locals, is not to be glorified, man. The dude was a straight menace, beyond more than what I really want to focus on in this podcast. But if you do your research on who that man actually was and some of the crazy things that he did, he messed up this entire country for a very, very long time. And the reality that those people saw in the 80s is probably why it's so nice here, because they have that in their past that they know that they never ever want to go back to that again, man. So this
Right.
place is really built up and it's nice and people are friendly and they just want to help each other. You don't see that narcos type mentality here. Like we haven't ever even got a feeling of unease here where we
Yeah.
weren't safe here, man. It's been great.
Yeah.
That being said, like my friends that live here, they encourage me not to tell people outside of Colombia how nice
Right.
Colombia is,
Yeah.
because they don't want people to know it. But it's been great, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the same feel we get when we've gone to areas where we've been advised not to, like Nigeria, even. And then when I went to Cambodia, in the times that we've been to Peru, it's like I don't understand how these people have so little, but are always so freaking happy and so incredibly nice, welcoming. Like we were driving through, or my first trip to Peru, it was a motorcycle ride, and you see all these mud huts and you're like, wow, I wonder what it looked like to be inside. And if you just happen to be like taking a snack break or something, they'll invite you in their house, and you're just some white dude out of America. You're like, they invite you in and they walk you to their house and show you all that they don't have in your mind. And you're like, that wouldn't happen in America. And they wouldn't welcome you with open arms. They wouldn't give you a cup of tea in America. Somebody would be fearful that you parked in front of their house with a bunch of motorcycles, more than likely. And it's an amazing feeling to be so welcomed. And then, the same thing with Nigeria. You stick out big time there and people stare at you, but it's not because they want to hurt you. They're like, well, who's this guy? Let me go talk to him. And they welcome you. They ask you about your family. And it's incredible. And we love traveling, but that's awesome.
Yeah, there's so much to be learned and said for experiences outside the United States. Obviously, I love the United States, but I think it's good if people can peek their head out every once in a while and compare it to what else is out there, man.
Yeah. Any plans to come back, or is you're done forever staying down?
When we first started traveling, we said, we want to spend a month in every country that we visited. Obviously, we're not going to spend a month in every country in the world, but every place that's on our radar, we want to spend a month. We don't want to be go, 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 1 week here, 1 week there.
Yeah.
When that conversation started, we said, you know what, let's do it for a year. Let's see how far we get in a year. And then it turned into, well, let's do 2 years. And now it's just open-ended, man. Like we are enjoying ourselves so much that I don't have any plans to come back to the States anytime soon.
Well, you got a nice tan. It's the winter here. Everybody's pale. So it must be nice. 70 year round. Nice.
It is, man. I love to hike and I love to be outdoors. And actually, we just spent 3 weeks in Patagonia, traveling through Chile and Argentina. And for me, man, just to be outside any day of the week, man, it's good for my soul, man.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of the reason I've gone to Peru and all these areas, because I like to hike. I've climbed Mount Whitney. I go to Whistler multiple times a year to mountain bike and hike around Squamish and stuff. But anyways, back to business. I don't want to make it all about all that. So you've got a program or website called the autopilot.life, correct? And how you were there, but you go ahead and explain it. I'm going to botch it.
Yeah, the autopilot.life, I've built this education portion of my business just to try to give back. I've created this roadmap that has worked in my business and countless other students. And the autopilot life is all about putting your business on autopilot so that you can live the life that you want to live. And I know traveling full time isn't everybody's ideal life,
right.
But whatever the case may be, everybody wants more time back, and being able to systemize your business and just kind of look at it from a different perspective and understand what your time is worth, is invaluable. So, on my website, I have a free book. It's called The Book of Mistakes, Why You're Not Where You Want to Be in Real Estate Yet. A lot of times on social media or these mentors come out and you see the polished version of where they are now, but you don't a lot of times see all the things that it took to get there and all the failures and all the mistakes. And so I just wanted to create a book to be completely candid about all the failures and hopefully people can see that and maybe learn from that and avoid some of the mistakes that I've made to be able to get to where I am now.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Cause like we said earlier, I mean, I don't think there's anybody in real estate that hasn't lost a decent amount of money and had their ups and downs. I think it was actually RJ who made a post once about how real estate is the very definition of a roller coaster business. It's never an even keel type of deal. It's always great month. This is the best business in the world to what the hell am I doing in real estate back to, it's all fine and dandy, but, man, I love that you've made it down there. So you're there a year now. You have no real plans of coming back anytime soon. Is Columbia the state? You gonna stay in Columbia or just whatever happens?
The kids are doing great in school here. Like I said, they're picking up Spanish. They're bilingual.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, my oldest is also going to be learning Italian and French. So I want to keep them in school here for at least a couple more years. We talk about spending a couple months in Italy, or we really really love Australia. But for right now, Columbus home base. We'll use this to travel and come back to.
Yeah.
But for right now, man, we're pretty comfortable.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I tend to be a jumping around type of interviewer. So now I'm thinking about how many hours do you spend on your business down there in South America? I mean, or is it pretty much automated at this point?
Well, it's mostly automated to the point where all I have to do is oversee it. I check in every day. So my total work week is about 5 hours. If there's a fire that I need to put out, which is rare, I like to give my team the resources and the confidence that they can make decisions. So creating an FAQ not only for my sellers and my buyers, but also for my team. So we can see what's repetitive, and we're always adding to that. But that's it, man. I just oversee the process now and make sure that my KPIs are on point. I have a weekly meeting with my lead manager. We look at what the leads have done for that week and decide if we need to put more money somewhere or take money away from other places. Yeah. And I'm just the manager of the processes now.
Yeah. That's pretty sweet. That is pretty sweet. 5 hours. You got one more hour and then you can be part of the 4-hour work week. But you're almost there.
I'm a loser.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, what's business look like in the future? You've got some rentals. Are you currently buying rentals? Are you expanding? Or are you just sticking to your deal and you're going for it, the wholesale?
Yeah, I've been working on an entitlement deal for a while. It's a hospital that had been converted to an apartment complex and since is vacant. And it's on the historical registry. So I've spent a year of my life getting that thing qualified for historic tax credits. Got architectural drawings. It's a 20-unit apartment building. And I'm on the fence between, selling it now or doing the renovations on it. But for me, it's always about having a consistent deal flow with wholesales to the point where it's almost predictable, like passive income. And then putting a portion of that towards rentals, getting rid of my single families and getting into more multis and allocating a portion of those for Airbnb as well. I'm seeing a lot of Airbnb success over the last couple of years. And I know that more competition is going to be coming, but I also believe that more guests are going to be coming as well. So, that's kind of what my focus is on eventually continuing to scale my passive so I can do even less in my business.
Right. What makes you want to sell your single families, go multifamily only?
Just because I think the maintenance is less and the headache is less and the turnover doesn't necessarily hurt as much. I just haven't been, I like rentals, right? If somebody gave me a rental, I would take any rental in the right area. Right. However, I'm just looking at the way the multifamilies are performing for me, and I just think the maintenance is a lot less. And that's why I just want to cut my overhead. Right. What's been your experience with multi and passive?
Similar. My single families, I've had one solid tenant. I had 2 solid tenants in the houses. The duplex, she was a nightmare. But the apartments, even though I have it's a short-term apartment, 15 units. And so they're technically long-term leases, but they're month to month because it's a lower income type of area. And I want to have ease of access of being able to get them out. So I have one or two people move in and out every month, but it's in a 15 unit, you don't feel the pain as if you had a person move out every single month in a single family. But it's also another reason there is a little bit of pain point there. So I want to move into storage, and I do have one small storage. It's vacant right now, so I don't have any like real parameters on how it's performing yet. But I anticipate, based off of what I've learned from other people, that it's even less painful than multifamily. So that and mobile home parks with the manager on site, so they kind of just like do everything. Nice. That's my goal, anyways. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I could talk to you forever for even just the outdoor stuff, but I don't want to take up your whole morning here. But is there anything you wanted to touch on before taking off?
You know, I think when we get into real estate, we have an idea of what it's going to turn into, and then we start doing it for so long, it's hard for us to look back and remember what we got into it for. But for me, you know, I was in the middle of it and I was just stressed and just trying to figure out, sometimes I was like you mentioned earlier, like I was hating real estate. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And I realized that, you know, as an entrepreneur, I can design the business however I want to design it. Yeah. And so just being aware of that, and, you know, just letting everybody know that if you're not happy with where you are in your business right now, you have the golden ticket to be able to change it. And, you know, it's not going to be an overnight process, but just to slowly put pieces in place one at a time. Yep. So that you just design it however it is that you want to, whatever reason you got into real estate. You know, the money's great, yeah, but the time is another factor I think a lot of us got into it for as well. So, you know, piece by piece, bite by bite, you can change if you wanted to.
Right. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned time, because a lot of people get into real estate for, of course, the money, and then they think there's a time freedom there. And when you first get into it, there is no time freedom until you figure out the systems like you have. But nah, that's awesome, man. Well, anyways, again, I don't want to take up your whole day. I always ask everybody the same question at the end of the interview is if you had 6 months to live, what would you do with it? But I feel like I already know your answer since you're kind of living your dreams, your family's dreams there. But how would you answer that one?
Man, that's a great question. The realistic answer for me, if I had 6 months to live, is I'd allocate a portion of my time to make sure that my family is set forever without me. Yeah. You know, making sure that they have the safety nets and the systems to be able to continue on without me. And after I know that they're going to be good without me, they're going to get 100% of me, man. That's it. No questions asked. I wouldn't want to spend an hour more in my business knowing that an hour more in my business means an hour less with my family. That's how I would look at it. Making sure my family's good without me, and then they get 100% of me for the rest of the time I have.
Right. It's awesome. Well, man, I appreciate it. Enjoy your time down there working on your tan. I'm glad I got to interview you, man. It's been a great honor to be able to learn from you. It's re-energized me. Honestly, I've been a little bit down in the ground the past couple of months because, like we were talking about, business is one of those deals, a roller coaster, and I've lost a significant amount of money these past few months, and I've been thinking, what the heck am I doing in real estate? But I appreciate the re-energizing interview, man. Thank you.
Yeah, man. It was a great conversation, man. Thanks for having me on. It was just fun.
Cool. Appreciate it, man. Have a good day.
All right, you too, Brandon.
All right, later.